Hello, I'm Mario Toneguzzi, and I'm taking care of business. Joining me today is Michael Holden, who is Vice President of Policy and Chief Economist with the Business Council of Alberta. Michael, you folks today released the Alberta Low-Carbon Industrial Strategy report. Tell me a little bit about what that is.
Well, this report is really about, we know that Canada has targets to achieve, 2030 targets to achieve 40 to 45% emissions reduction and net zero by 2050. And this report is about the fact that the pathway to those targets, the pathway to net zero has to run through Alberta. Because of our industrial structure, we are by far the highest emitting province in the country. And if Canada is going to achieve its climate goals, it needs to happen in Alberta. And so because of that different industrial structure in this province, the goal behind our paper was to talk about the fact that we can't have a one-size-fits-all policy to achieve these kinds of emissions reductions. We need to focus in Alberta on the areas where we can start to lower those emissions. So this is a strategy to help us do that. Okay,
so can you talk a little bit about some of the recommendations? How do we get there?
Sure. Well, I think that, before I do that, I talk quickly about what the goals of this paper were. So what we wanted to see, or what we wanted the result of this strategy and these recommendations to be, is to ensure that Alberta continues to be it contributes meaningfully to Canadian emissions reductions, that we contribute meaningfully to global emissions reductions, and that we do so in a way that allows the province to continue to prosper and grow. So we have a range of recommendations and objectives and principles that we want to abide by in order to achieve these. And the recommendations really run across a very wide range of policy areas. We have some foundational policies regarding carbon pricing, consistent policy, federal, provincial, business, and Indigenous cooperation in order to achieve these goals, and then some industry-specific recommendations for some of the specific challenges that we face in Alberta. And just to highlight one, we know that the federal government is looking at creating a net zero electricity grid across Canada, and that's a difficult proposition in a province like Alberta, where we don't have a zero-emitting electricity baseload. Or peak power load because of our lack of hydro resources and lack of nuclear power. And so it's really about addressing those kinds of challenges and how we can get Alberta to contribute to these targets. And like I said, in a way that the province prospers and grows.
Michael, can you talk from an economic point of view about why it's important that we embark on this low carbon strategy?
Well, this is the direction in which the world is going. We're seeing, countries around the world are decarbonizing, are trying to decarbonize. Capital markets are investing in countries and in businesses that have a specific plan and that they believe are going to be sustainable in the long term. And if we want to attract some of those investment dollars into Alberta and into Canada in general, we need to have a solid plan, and governments, as I said before, and businesses need to work together to do this. I think one of the challenges and the reasons we wanted to write this paper is because we have a history in Canada of setting targets, not meeting them, and then in place of action, setting more stringent targets. And that's something that we can't afford to do any longer. And we also can't afford to underestimate the size and scale and speed of the investments that are going to be required if we actually need to meet these goals. We cited a couple of studies in this paper of ours that we're talking, one of them suggested it could be in the range of $60 billion a year for the next decade or two. And this is a huge capital build out, and we're on the path to decarbonization, but it's a long path. And so we want to make sure that the fossil fuel industries that we have now can continue to produce the lowest carbon products possible, and at the same time that we can move forward towards cleaner energy, towards developing environmental and clean tech solutions here in Alberta so that we can export those solutions and export that energy abroad.
Did you look at other jurisdictions and seek guidance on what they're doing?
We did, and and a couple of specific ones that I'll highlight. We looked at the Netherlands and Norway in particular, and the lesson that we took from those two locations is that countries that have been most effective at reducing greenhouse gas emissions, especially in hard to decarbonize sectors like the kind that we have in Alberta, it's really through government and industry cooperation. Sticks won't cut it, and it's only when government and industry works together, and especially in the early years of projects, that's where the most effective emissions reductions end up taking place.
Okay, super. Well, thanks a lot, Michael, for joining us today.
No problem. Thank you.
All right, super. That was Michael Holden, who is Vice President of Policy and Chief Economist with the Business Council of Alberta. I'm Mario Toneguzzi. This has been Taking Care of Business. Thanks for joining us today.